So this is my library tab. So you can't really make any edits to pictures once they're in here. These ones are all ones that I already edited. But when you want to actually edit, you'll go to the develop module. And this is where all of the magic happens. I'm trying to figure out where to put you guys. Okay. So the first thing that I do when I start editing a picture for Delta specifically is I just slap this matte filter on it, which I know that looks kind of rough right now, but all these presets will come with your, like when you download the software, they'll just be here. And then you can also make your own, which I've done like over here. So then if I just here's the Mal the Band one. So if I can just slap that on this picture and it'll make all the changes that I saved. But you know, a lot of them aren't gonna look good. So for now, I'm gonna stick with the matte one. And then once you have your preset on there, if you wanna use a preset, then you're gonna come over here. And the first thing I usually do is I'll start playing with the exposure because that's gonna affect how bright the picture is. And since this one of Caleb is backlit, I don't want to way overdo it, but like, I think that looks like around there looks pretty cool. And really it is all just about your preferences. So, you know, you guys might like it darker or way brighter than that. And it really is up to you. And that's why photography is an art. But so then if we come down to contrast, that's going to be like how bright the light tones are and how dark the darker tones are. So you can see like what a big difference that makes. So I'm gonna pull it back a little bit just because Caleb already is in the dark. So maybe something like around there for now. And then for the highlights, that's gonna determine all your lightest tones, how blown out they are. So if I went all the way up, it would look like that, which is kind of ridiculous. So, and that is way too dark. So I'm gonna go somewhere around maybe here. I like how that little highlight looks in his glasses and I wanna make it pop, so I'm gonna not blow him out too much. And then shadows is that's a really good tool for like, if your picture is, you think it's properly exposed, so you don't really want to like mess with the exposure, but the like dark tones are just way too dark, you can use this to lift them up. But you see if I do it too much, like over by his ear and like his arms and everything look like they get blown out because I overdid it. So I'm going to stay maybe like 34, 32. Yeah, I think that looks okay. And then the whites are just going to be kind of like the highlights, just how blown out the white tones in the picture are going to be. And I'm going to leave it maybe 47. I think that looks pretty cool, especially with his glasses there. And then blacks are it's kind of like the shadows, where you're just determining like how black your blacks are going to be. So like that's as light as it can go, and then it gets really dark when you go over to the left. So maybe I'll stick around there. Yeah, I think that looks okay. And then as far as this stuff goes, I usually won't mess with the texture that much, just because it can make your picture look kind of fake, which isn't always what we want. So I'll probably leave that at 0. Clarity is something that I use quite a bit though. Like if your picture looks like, I don't want to say hazy, but if there's like a weird texture situation going on and you want some more definition, you can just bump the clarity. But if you overdo it, like I said, with most things, it's gonna look silly. So I'm gonna probably just bump it a tiny bit. And then dehaze is kind of a similar thing. Like if you had a foggy picture and you wanted your subject to be clearer, if you bumped the dehaze tool, then it would help with that a little bit. But for this one, I kind of like it without it, so I'm gonna leave it. And then vibrance and saturation are all about the colors. So that's like almost black and white if I take the vibrance all the way down. And then it's a little bit crazy when you go to the right. So, I mean, all this stuff is really just about playing around with what you think looks the best. And a lot of times, you know, if you mess with one thing, so like if I bump the saturation like crazy, then I would need to change my vibrance so that the picture didn't look like that, like Caleb was in the Blue Man Group. So that's always a good thing to keep in mind is check your whole picture when you mess with one thing, because you could have to change others of these elements. And that still looks a little bit too much for me. So once I get through all this stuff, I will usually see if I want to mess with the color balance. So if I take this, like this blue slider right here where it says temp, if I go over here, then that blue light turns into a green light. But then if I left that there and then came to tint and moved this around, then it would be based, like I said, based off of that last thing that like the last adjustment that I made. So if you wanted the light a different color, you could do a lot of things with this slider. And this is also, especially like if you have normal light and it's not a color to begin with, this is super helpful because like if you are in like tungsten light, which is like super yellow light that like lamps give off in your house, and you want your picture to look less warm, you could just pull it over towards the blue a little bit and you could like even out the color of that light. For now, I'm just gonna maybe leave that like there. And then this is the tone curve. I usually won't mess with this because it makes huge changes to your picture, and I would kind of rather just use these because it's easier and it's faster. But say I wanted to mess with the tone curve, you could do a lot of crazy things. So like these are your midtones. So if I bump that way up, it's going to brighten all my midtones up. Shadows. Yeah, you get it. I'm going to, if you ever mess something up and you want to undo what you did, you just go up to edit, undo as per most software programs. And then once we get down here, this is where things get pretty interesting. So if there's a specific color that you don't like you don't like how it's showing up in the picture, so like since blue and green are the most prominent right now, I'm just gonna go to blue. If I don't want that blue as saturated, but I want to leave everything else as saturated as it is, I could just pull back on this. And like you see right by his face, like that shadow is losing all of its saturation. Or if it was like the green, I would just go up here and click on the green. And if I wanted the green to be a little bit yellower, I would slide it towards the left in the hue tab. But if I wanted it bluer, then I could slide it to the right and it would only be affecting the green tones. And like, to be honest, when I'm editing pictures of people like in Delta, I usually won't mess with anything below this main stuff right here, this first like page, because there's usually like 100 pictures to edit and that's a lot. But if you did want to like apply that to all the pictures, you could just like set it for one, and then if you come up to, sorry, my zoom thing is in the way. If you come up to settings, you could go to copy settings and then click copy again, and then I could just come over to this picture of Emery and slap those same settings from the last picture right onto him. And it's not gonna look good, but you know what, it worked. So that's what's important. And then I'm going to undo that because that looks terrible. The only other things that I didn't really go over like in the develop module are sharpening. So if your picture's a little bit out of focus or you just want it to look like crisper, you could bump this. But the thing with that is a lot of times it's gonna make your picture really grainy. So like, as you can tell, that might not be something you want. So I would suggest not bumping your sharpening up too much unless like your picture's really out of focus and you don't have another option. But if you do overdo it and you've got this grain going on, you can come down here to noise reduction and it will start to smooth out that grain. But everything in Lightroom and editing in general is a balancing act because like say I way overdo the noise reduction, now it just looks like a painting. Like it doesn't look like, it looks fake. So that's probably not something you want to do unless that is the effect you're going for, in which case go off. So I'm gonna pull that back down. And then like all this stuff, the masking is just gonna like, how do I explain this? So say like I had a big area, like say I had Emery's hand. If I bumped the masking, then it wouldn't sharpen as much. Like right here, it would just sharpen the edges. But if I had the masking all the way off, it's gonna sharpen everything. And that's where you're gonna have a noise problem again. So you might want to use masking a little bit if you want to sharpen your picture. And all this stuff is just gonna like change the skew of your picture. So I really usually do not mess with this. But if you need to line something up better, you could mess with all this stuff like X offset. You get it. But yeah, okay. I just threw so much at you guys at once, especially you guys who don't know how to use Lightroom or haven't used it before. So do you have questions?
Do you typically go down the line of things in the way that you showed them to us?
Well, okay, so I usually will just mess with this stuff. Honestly, what I normally do is I'll go to the very first picture and I'll edit it how I want it to, or how I want like everything to be edited. And then I'll either make a preset, which is, so like if I wanted to make a preset that I could come back to later, I would just hit this plus right here next to presets and then click create preset. And then just like, you know, if there's anything that you did that you don't want to be a part of that preset, you would just like unclick it. So say I don't want to mess with the tone curve, but I want to keep everything else, then I'll unclick that and then name it Delta and then save it. So then if I went to another picture, I could come down to user presets and I have so many there. And then if I clicked on the preset, it would apply all of those things to Anjali. And then usually if I did that, I'm just gonna look, like once I apply the other settings, I'm just gonna look at the new picture and see what needs to be tweaked because it's like usually not gonna be perfect. So like, say I wanted to bump the exposure on this, I could do that, but the rest of the settings would still stay the same from the last one. And also if you didn't really care about, saving the preset for later, you could also just do the like copy settings and paste settings things that I showed you a second ago. But that sometimes takes a little bit longer if you're working with like 150 pictures. But yeah, I usually won't even go below this page. I'll pretty much just mess with this stuff for Delta stuff, at least. Anybody else have anything they want to know?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So when when I'm editing and I'm color correcting stuff in Premiere, and it's sort of similar, like it's basically a lot of the same stuff here, even down to like the HSL
Mm-hmm.
things. I like kind of religiously look at the scopes and like the actual visual guides to sort of just make sure I'm on the right path. Do you do that, or is it very much just like what you see is what's best?
Honestly, I don't do that.
Okay.
When I'm doing stuff for just like Delta or for fun, I will honestly just like see what I think looks cool when I'm like color correcting. So like,
Hmm.
you know, if I thought this blue was too much, I would kind of I honestly just mess around with these until I like how it looks. But like if I'm actually trying to get like an accurate white balance for a picture, like for my photo class, for example, like that's something we have to do. I will kind of just take a look at like the whites in the picture and see how accurate those are. Cause like say I know that this wall or this thing on the wall is like pure stark white, then by looking at this picture with the edits I made on it, I can tell that I got off track with my white balance because that's definitely yellow. So I would push it towards the blue a little bit until I thought that it looked just like the stark white that it was in real life. But honestly, when you're just doing stuff for fun, like to post on Instagram or whatever, I would kind of encourage you to just mess around to see what you think looks the coolest. Like what reads the best, you know? But yeah, that's a good question.
Thanks. And thanks for your answer.
There are some other tools I guess I could show you guys how to use if you wanted to start getting into this. So say I want to sharpen up Ollie's eyes. I can go over to this adjustment brush thing. So it's this line with the circle. And if you click on that, you can pick any, like most of the adjustment options that you have from the other panel are like options here. So say I want to sharpen her eyes up, I will stay with sharpness. And then maybe I want her eyes a little bit brighter too, but I only want to apply this stuff with my brush. So I'll do it in the adjustment layer instead. So like now, if I know her eyes are super grainy, but I'll change my brush size too. But so if I paint this on, now these settings are only going to apply to what I brush on. But you know, that looks kind of dumb. So I'll probably take the exposure back down and notice how it's only changing where I drew. So like, you know, if you have specific things you want done, but you don't want to apply them everywhere, this is a great tool. And then you just click done and it'll stay. Now our eyes are a little sharper. Also, this is really helpful for like, if you have something in the frame that you really don't want there, you can click on this little circle with a little arrow up here. And what it does is, let's say I want to get rid of the face on this poster. I'll click right there. And if I drag this guy around, I can pick any other part of the picture to go on top of it. So like, put Ollie's eye over there, or Ollie's forehead. So like, that's super helpful too if it comes to like, I mean, her skin's perfect. Say I want to edit this little dot off the mask. Once my computer loads, I'll just take my little brush on top of it and click, and then it usually tries to like smart grab. So if it thinks it knows how to heal it, it'll grab from that area. But if you don't like it, you can drag it around and you can get pixels from anywhere in the picture. So now the little dot's gone. But yeah. This guy is kind of like the adjustment brush where you can change something, but then you can draw a big rectangle and then choose where you want it most prominent in your picture. So if I bumped my exposure up, I could put it on top of Ollie, or all the way across Ollie, or just on the left. So that's another helpful thing for selective edits. But yeah, those are, oh, and then you can crop right here. So, you know. And if there are other things that you, like if I went way too fast and you guys don't remember, or you just want to see what other things you can do, there's tons of YouTube videos for like Lightroom tutorials. Some accounts that I really like are Mango Street, and what else? There's Mango Street, there's Peter, what is his last name? There's a wedding photographer that I like. We gotta look that up, just so you guys have options if you want more tutorials and more specific options for Lightroom.
Is it Peter McKinnon?
It is Peter McKinnon. Sam, you're a genius.
Thank you.